Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle something that gets talked about all the time, but honestly is rarely understood. We're looking at the psychology of people who stay single long-term. We're going to toss out those old preconceived notions and really dive right into the clinical data. Trust me, it's going to completely shift how you view relationships, independence, and the human mind itself. Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever looked at someone who's single, like someone who could very easily be in a relationship and just wondered, why are they still alone? I mean, the immediate assumption is usually that they're just unlucky, right? Or maybe they're secretly super lonely, pining for a partner, or just, absolutely terrified of commitment. We tend to look at singlehood like it's this temporary waiting room, or just a bad roll of the dice. But is that actually what's going on?
Well, it turns out there's a massive disconnect between what society thinks and what science actually shows us. The cultural stigma kind of drills it into our heads that being single equals fear, loneliness, and bad luck. But the psychological reality, it paints a totally different picture. Research actually shows that for a lot of folks, remaining unpartnered isn't some default setting or a failure. It's a highly conscious, healthy choice, and it's driven by some intense self-awareness and an incredible knack for pattern recognition.
Section 1. Wired for Independence.
To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to look at how certain people are just fundamentally built. If you look at research on attachment styles, which is basically how we bond with other people, it points to these specific psychological orientations. Specifically, we're talking about secure or dismissive avoidant attachment. These are folks who feel totally comfortable, complete, and internally validated without needing that constant relational closeness. For them, being alone doesn't feel isolating. It just feels natural. They naturally lean towards freedom rather than the constant attachment a traditional relationship usually demands.
And this happens because, for them, internal validation completely outweighs external dependency. Psychologists link this kind of wiring to a remarkably strong sense of self. See, when someone can internally validate themselves, when they know exactly who they are and what they're worth, they just don't need to lean on a romantic relationship to feel complete. They prioritize their independence simply because their foundation is already rock solid.
Section 2. The Power of Selection.
So, if their internal wiring is super secure, how does that actually affect the way they view potential partners? Now, what's really interesting about this is that a common myth says single people are just way too picky. You know the trope, that they have completely unrealistic expectations and are chasing some impossible idea of perfection. But the reality? They just have clear standards. They know exactly what they want. They aren't out there looking for a flawless human being. Instead, they're just highly self-aware and they're actively avoiding fundamental misalignments in their lives.
And the studies back this up entirely. For a lot of long-term singles, their core philosophy is pretty straightforward. Waiting is simply better than settling just to avoid being lonely. People with this level of self-awareness are significantly less likely to settle. They would much rather protect their time and wait for a match that actually aligns with their life, rather than pouring their precious energy into something that completely contradicts their core values.
Section 3. Pattern recognition.
But where do these sky-high standards actually come from? Well, they aren't just pulled out of thin air. A lot of long-term singles don't fear relationships. Actually, they understand them almost too well because of their past experiences. Think about it like touching a hot stove. Once you do it, your brain learns pretty fast not to do it again, right? The brain adapts. When people go through deep emotional inconsistency, painful betrayals, or just severe relationship burnout, their neurology literally adjusts. The brain registers those relationship pitfalls and becomes incredibly selective moving forward just to prevent a repeat.
So the crucial point is this. This isn't avoidance, it's pattern recognition. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. We're so quick to label people as having trauma avoidance or being commitment phobes. But actually, scratch that. It's highly intelligent self-preservation. They're reading the room. They're picking up on the behavioral patterns of potential partners, and they're making smart protective choices.
Check out this insight. The mind is trying to protect energy, not reject connection. The psychological weight of that is just immense. Protecting your peace, guarding your time, and preserving your emotional bandwidth, that is absolutely not the same thing as being anti-love. They still value connection for sure, but they just absolutely refuse to sacrifice their energy for a connection that's only going to drain them.
Section 4. Fulfillment beyond romance.
So if they aren't pouring all their energy into chasing romance, where exactly is it going? Well, it goes toward the holistic self. For a lot of people, a relationship is not the center of the universe. It's really just one slice of a very full pie. Imagine equal slices for your career, creativity, friendships, personal growth, and romance.
When your life is already packed with rich friendships and creative passions, your emotional needs are being met in all sorts of diverse ways. And naturally, that dramatically lowers any desperate urgency to go out and find a romantic partner just to fill a void. Because honestly, there is no void.
Psychology actually has a formal term for this exact state of being. It's called self-determination. This is a psychological state where individuals feel deeply fulfilled when their needs for autonomy, competence, and purpose are met. By grounding their lives in these specific elements, they achieve this profound sense of holistic fulfillment that is completely independent of their relationship status.
Now, this self-determination is built on 3 main pillars. Step 1 is autonomy, having control over your own life and the choices you make. Step 2 is competence, feeling capable and effective in what you do, whether that's your career, a side hustle, or a hobby. And step 3 is purpose, having a real, meaningful reason to get out of bed in the morning. When someone cultivates these 3 pillars, their need for external validation drops to basically 0. They're completely fulfilled from the inside out.
Section 5. The Strength of Solitude. Which leads us to our final, and honestly probably our most powerful paradigm shift. We are talking about the ultimate superpower in modern life. What happens when you are completely and utterly unafraid of being alone? There's a stark psychological difference between making fear-based decisions and making totally secure decisions. A lot of people enter relationships just to escape loneliness, but the folks who thrive while single? They've spent time building a real tolerance, even a deep appreciation for solitude. They're making highly conscious choices from a place of secure independence.
Which leaves us with this final kind of provocative thought to consider. When you aren't afraid of being alone, who do you finally choose? Think about that for a second. When the fear of solitude is literally removed from the equation, you become absolutely immune to choosing a partner for the wrong reasons. You don't settle, you don't just brush past red flags. So the next time you see someone who is happily single, don't just assume they're missing out. Realize that they might just understand something about psychology, self-worth, and pattern recognition that the rest of us haven't quite figured out yet. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this completely changed how you view the incredible strength of being single.